All right, YouTube, I'm here with a good friend, an old friend of the place to be, North South, the wrestling community, Johnny Hedgepath. Johnny Sorrow, what is going on, buddy?
Oh, not much, not much. Just chilly Sunday here in Colorado. Getting ready to wrap up the month and head back to New Jersey for a week to see the folks and get some good pizza.
I'm sure there's not that great pizza in Colorado.
Yeah, there's some okay pizza, but it's not the same, you know.
Yeah, I'm a Northeast guy myself, so yeah, I agree. It's probably not the same.
You know, some fried calamari that's not like $20 a plate because it's a delicacy here, whereas where I'm from, it's bar food.
Excellent. All right. Well, Johnny, you're vast in wrestling history. Where would you kind of wave this bloodline story overall before we kind of dive into this bloodline versus OG bloodline war games match?
I know it's like, with a lot of my fellow old people. Can we curse on this? Just by the way.
Fuck yeah, bitch. Fuck.
Oh yeah. Okay, just checking. It'd be like fucking heresy to a lot of my pals and everything to say that anything modern lives up to anything of the old stuff. But
that's true.
I think for modern wrestling, the bloodline story is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, in my opinion, just for the longevity of it. Because we haven't, like, you go back to, like, say, Memphis and stuff, and you can say, well, the story of Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee that goes over the course of 4 decades, and shit like that, or the history between guys like Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. But as far as, like, in WWE, a 4-year and ongoing storyline that even while the old pervert Vince was still there, he couldn't fuck it up because Heyman and Roman were mainly running it. But that also, like, with a few little blips, everything's made sense.
Yes.
And they take time with it. Like, I can actually think of the only thing that didn't make sense was there was the period where Jimmy Uso quits first, and then followed by Jay, but then Jimmy joins right back and is begging for free. It's like they didn't know what to do with Jimmy, so they had to call an audible and make him heel again. It's really like the only creative blip in the entire story, going right up to what happened on, we'll talk about it later, right up to what happened on SmackDown.
Yep.
With the announcement of the 5th member, where you're like, it all tracks, it all makes sense. And I think that's more of a testament to Heyman than it is anybody else, because he's leading the creative charge of this. Okay, you think about long term. Raiden and Tommy Dreamer went on forever in ECW. With Heyman, exactly. But yeah, I've been enjoying it so much. I mean, not just me, everybody in WWE must, because when it started, WWE was awful. It was awful. I couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
And once the bloodline storyline started taking off, things, a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say, and things just started getting better and better as Triple H started getting more and more creative control. And then when they finally kick the old pervert out, and now suddenly, hey, look, almost all of the creative makes sense, and they take time, because that's just it. McMahon wanted to meddle with this so bad. Yep. And it feels like he was hands off on it because it all makes sense, and they took their time without hot-shotting anything. I love it. And I know lots of fans are still like, they're still fucking doing this thing. I'm like, I could see for some people 4 years being like, this is too much. But, I'm 54 years old and don't have a short attention span. I like a long story like this, and I can't wait to see where it goes. And one last thing is that my favorite little bit is that with two exceptions, being the 5th members on both teams, the entire bloodline story has been booked exactly like I booked it in my head the day after WrestleMania. I'm like, yep, this is exactly what I thought they would do. And they're doing it. And it makes sense because, I've been watching this shit forever. And I kind of know, like, that's probably the best bet. But, the addition of Bronson Reed surprised me. And the Punk thing makes perfect sense. But they fooled me because they really made it seem like it was going to be Rollins. They really were teasing that. And the way and then they had me believe in it. And I was still like, oh, that's fine. It makes sense because he has history. Blah, blah, blah. But then when they didn't pull that trigger and they went with Punk instead, and I'm like, holy shit. And I'm like, oh, wow, that makes even more sense.
Even more
So,
There's
yeah,
two
I've
layers.
been loving it. I've been loving it.
Yes, for sure. So even coming out of WrestleMania 39, we had the follow of the Usos losing and them starting that Usos versus Solo and Roman. So WrestleMania is pivotal. Coming out of WrestleMania 40, we perhaps thought that the next chapter began when Cody dethroned Roman, ending the 3.5-4 year title reign of Roman Reigns. And you saw Solo Sikoa kind of emerging out of all of that and kind of making the bloodline his own. What have you thought of Solo as the self-proclaimed, self-entitled leader of the bloodline?
I think he's doing a good job, and it's really getting thrown into the deep end because he went from being the silent enforcer to being have a completely different personality and be on the mic all the time. And I think in ring, I think he's fine in ring. A lot of like internet guys are all just whatever. Like here's the other thing about a lot of the bloodline stuff. If you're looking for your quote unquote Dave Meltzer 7-star bullshit, no, the Usos, you just look at that Uso versus Uso match from Mania this year. Yikes.
Yeah,
so I don't give a shit about that as much as I do about story and presence and a feeling of being taken away by it. And Solo scratches all those itches. I think he's only going to get better, but he's also, it works for the character because it makes you hate him more. Who's this punk motherfucker who thinks he's now the boss? And he's getting better and better. And to be perfectly honest, the addition of Jacob Fatu is what made it.
Yeah,
because when it was the Sons of Haku, at first I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. I loved it because on an old radio show I used to do, we did a bit one time about that Haku had been dropping his seed all over the world, and someday when the Earth is being invaded by aliens, the Sons of Haku will rise and save humanity. It was, it's all bullshit. So anytime I see the Sons of Haku, I'm happy. I'm especially happy that Tongaloa is the clumsiest guy in wrestling, and he's part of this. But then when Jacob Fatu is part of it, and he's going to be the breakout star, not Solo.
Yeah, he's going to be the breakout
star because he's amazing in the ring. He has so much raw charisma. You really think he's crazy. And as they've shown recently, he's gold on the mic. I think he's going to really be the star. But I think Solo's doing great right now. You wouldn't have Fatu as the leader. He's a wild man. So I think he's stepping up. Solo is, I think.
Yeah, he's a good bridge to get to Fatu eventually. But I feel like he's kind of settled into his spot with Roman's being at that 10 level in that role. I think Solo found himself at like 6.57 on the 10 scale of being, all right, he ended up being pretty good at the end of this as the leader. And do you think his days are numbered? Do you think he has much more legs as the bloodline leader? Or do you think that we have a pivot coming out of War Games for that side of the War Games? Not to give away the whole preview or whatever.
Well, like I said, everything happened the way I predicted it. And all of my predictions was, how do we get to War Games? What goes on after War Games? I have no idea.
That's beautiful. I don't either. Yeah.
And you know what? And that's a good thing because I've been watching this shit for so long and sticking even with WWE when it was the shits, just because down to the point where for a while it was only the pay-per-views because it was a tradition here that my buddies come over and we grill and the kids watch the pay-per-views or we go to a live show if the live show's in town. But the weekly TV I all but given up on, and then slowly came back. Then the pandemic killed me watching any wrestling because watching with no crowd just didn't make any sense. I came back a little with the video screen people because the bloodline got
Your
started
own-
and I was interested
Yeah.
in that. Because also I've been wanting, you can ask any of my old friends, I've been wanting a major storyline about the Onaway extended family taking over wrestling for 20 years. I was like, what? That
Really?
seems like everyone always talks about the great families of wrestling. I'm like, it's right there. There's a hell of a story right there. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to end the feud between the two bloodlines. I don't know. I don't think they're going to take this into NWO territory where it's just like, who gives a shit anymore? But there has to be a finish line somewhere, but I don't think it's after Sunday.
All right. So we talked about Solo. What do you think of Roman coming back post leader, post bad guy in this, I guess, new guy role? He is the same person, but the new portrayal of him from a traditional twist of good guys and bad guys. What do you think of Roman Reigns since coming back at SummerSlam?
I like it a lot because it's been a slow change. And has he changed? Because the one thing I used to hate as a kid was when a bad guy would turn good and suddenly the terrible, nasty asshole is now a righteous, God-fearing Christian all-American. I'm like, nah, what the fuck? And vice versa. and I mean, it really, that was how it worked in the late 80s, early 90s WWF, when I totally was not interested in it anymore because it was for children. Mm-hmm. And I was 18 years old and I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm dating. What am I doing with my Saturday afternoons? And then I got married and started watching wrestling again because, hey, it's fine. But the fact that he comes back and he's still an asshole. He's treating everyone like shit. No one likes him. And he's slowly accepted, Sammy and the Usos now as equals, but he still slips every now and then into being the tribal chief who orders everyone around. They're like, hey, fuck you, dude. And he's like, oh, shit, yeah.
I like that he's true to himself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. Exactly. He's true to himself. It's true to the character. And the thing is, in ring, he's been a babyface for a long, long time because the fans loved him. It was like, yes, Cody was getting more cheers at WrestleMania because Cody Rhodes is the hottest babyface in wrestling right now. But for a long time there, I mean, you might have been booing Roman. People might have been booing Roman in the build-up to feuds and everything. But there was always a lot of the crowd that was all there for him. As soon as with that ooh-ah thing, it fucking blows the roof off and now the people can really cheer for him as a good guy. And it's amazing to see because all those years of how Vince was trying to force him down everyone's throat as the new top babyface and nothing worked. And now they did it this way, the way it's supposed to be done in wrestling. And the people are insane for him. WWE right now has the dilemma of having the two most over baby faces in wrestling. When's the last time that happened?
Maybe three if you had Punk, Cody, and Roman.
Right? And well, that's just it. They're is one of the ways you could tell Vince is gone because Vince was never about a bunch of top baby faces. It was like one top baby face. Especially as he got older and older and older. And as he got older and older, the baby faces didn't stick together. It was only one guy. WWE right now has an entire roster of stacked over baby faces. I was like,
and then Jey Uso, even ancillary ones.
Sami Zayn, Jey Uso.
Yeah. LA Knight.
LA Knight. There's a ton. There's a ton. It's insane. There may be a little heel deficient, but they're starting to work on that. Just as an aside, I'm loving that they're working to get Ludwig Kaiser over as one of their a solo top villain because the guy's great.
Yeah,
I mean the pants though. I mean, I think he was wearing Magnum TA before the accident. Tiny pants, man. Oof.
All right, so we got Roman as the leader of the OG Bloodline coming into this match. What do you think of the Usos and Sami Zayn coming into this match? I like that it wasn't sudden. It started with Jimmy returning kind of to have Roman's back in Atlanta with the Bloodline. And then they kind of took their beatings and they needed to kind of get numbers up. Jimmy knew it. He got in Roman's ear. No yeet. And then finally we got the yeet, but he had to work on both ends of it. And I'm glad that they made us go through that journey of working on both ends of the spectrum between Jay and Roman. Because back in the day with the old pervert, as you would say, it would probably be instant, right? We wouldn't go through the week to week drama of the history of them two kind of just having their hearts torn apart, separating, screwing each other, so on and so forth. It would have been forgotten. It would have been instant, and it would have been chummy right away. And you wouldn't have the investment that we've had here with them coming back together. So, first of all, Usos, where are you at with them coming back together? I thought it was done very well. I don't really have much qualms with it. What say you?
I thought it was fine. It made a lot of sense. If anything, it felt, because I like things to move at a glacial pace. It felt like the Sammy thing happened a little too fast.
Yeah,
but
I was going to leave him out and then get to him. But yeah, as a whole,
they just maybe a little.
Too.
But that's me. That's me liking things really drawn out. Then I also know they've got to get to this fucking War Games match, right?
Yeah.
It's like in past years, it's always like in the last 2 weeks, they'll throw together a team because we've got a pay-per-view called War Games or Hell in the Cell.
Well, you kind of have that on the women's side.
That's kind of what happened on the women's side. We saw it on the women's one. That's exactly how that worked. But this is a part of a major part of a 4-year storyline that they're getting to. But it's a minor complaint. I like how they're playing into originally Jimmy was the one who liked Sammy and was letting him hang around with the bloodline, and they flipped that on its and Jay hated him. Yep. And they flip that, and there's still tension between Jimmy and Sammy, even now as they're all together in their t-shirts. I do love, real quick, here's why I love Sammy. Sammy's one of my favorites. I saw El Generico when he was a kid at Jersey All Pro on one of their first excursions. And much like the OG Bloodline angle, Sammy never had the actual matching shirt. He always had the honorary use, whatever. Yeah. So when they first came back, a couple of weeks ago, they came out all in the matching shirts. And then this week, Sammy's got his own shirt that says Sammy Uso. And I love it because for 2 reasons. One, because that's how it looked originally. They didn't all match. Number two, Sammy's a smart guy and realizes this is my shirt. I get all the merchandise money off this, and I don't have to share it with the bloodline.
Of course. Perfect.
And that's despite being rushed. I saw it was so I was reading a lot of stuff out there and hearing stuff too, even on Cornette, when they were like, well, who do you think there's going to be? And I was like, it's going to be Sami Zayn. And people were surprised by it. I was like, how are you surprised by this?
That giveaway. They went on the journey of making us want it and wait for it. But yeah, it had to be Sammy.
I mean, who else did you think? Because now, everyone in the family is in developmental now. So they just figured there would be someone.
These guys aren't ready.
No, they're not ready, and they're not part of the story. And Sammy is. In fact, when you looked at the booking of Sammy, the end of his Intercontinental run with Breaker, and then Jay, the way they had to get the belt off of him, get it onto Breaker real quick, and get it onto Jay, so Jay could go into this angle saying, I've reached the success I said I would.
Which I love that they did that, by the way.
Yeah, and you had to free Sammy up from all that to get him to out of the Intercontinental picture, along with Jay, to be part of this overall storyline. It's been woven together so well, and I love Sami Zayn. He's one of my absolute favorite wrestlers, and has been since that evening in Rahway, New Jersey, in 2005.
So these guys came together. And the kind of backbone of this whole bloodline, or now OG bloodline, has been Paul Heyman. Back in June, he was at Madison Square Garden. He was taking off TV and taken out of the WWE just from a meta standpoint or whatever.
Went to the table, took his only bump ever in his 50s.
Yeah, and it was fucking awesome. Head over tea kettle. He fucking looked like $1 million selling it. And yeah, it was needed for the bloodline at the time. It put Solo over, solidified him as that guy to go face Cody, which brought back Roman. But before then, Solo would kind of hold it over his head, play games with him, saying that, well, I've talked to Roman Reigns. He's put me in charge. You haven't talked to Roman. And my tribal chief, where are you? We've had that we embraced after the defeat at WrestleMania, and you've gone to your island of relevancy and kind of ditched me. So, and then we have had complete silence since Roman Reigns coming back involving Paul Heyman. So we have this lingering Paul Heyman Roman Reigns issue, reuniting, or what is it? And then finally, 2 weeks on SmackDown, we get the phone call, and the Usos are bothering him. You got to call him. You got to call him. And we're thinking it's going to be Seth Rollins, or we think it's going to be
yeah,
Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, one or the other.
One or the other, because it's been hinted and they've been meddling around this and so forth. And then he says, call the wise man, and the fucking place erupts. And you get that's the talk of the weekend. He called Paul Heyman, but when he called Paul Heyman, you had the
the numbers
disconnected. And he's either blocked.
You think Heyman pays his phone bill? Come on.
It's either blocked or he has a new phone number and didn't tell his tribal chief, Roman Reigns. So we find ourselves on SmackDown where the OG Bloodline is down a guy. The OGs, the original Bloodline, the new Bloodline added Bronson Reed because of the Seth Rollins involvement. And there's a hint of Samoan, so it's acceptable.
There's okay. Here's the thing though. Yeah, maybe a little, but the push of Bronson Reed, has been outstanding. And here's the thing. I remember reading this in The Rock's terrible book that he wrote in '98, that within the culture, once you're just accepted as part of the family, your family, that's all there is to it. And if that's the only excuse they need, you're like, hey, let's get Bronson Reed in there. You know, he's got
Zayn, it worked with him, right?
Some sort of background. What's that?
Yeah. It worked with Sami Zayn, right? They both have that guy.
Yeah, look for if Sammy's allowed. Look. if Sammy's allowed to be part of the family, why not Bronson Reed?
So we find ourselves on SmackDown with the 5 versus the 4 staring at each other, and then we have the excuse me, or the ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Roman's face fucking blows up. If it's relief, if it's I missed you, excitement, anticipation, all of it mixed into one. And he turns his head, and Heyman does this beautiful reveal of it's not 5-on-5, it's not 5-on-4, it's 5-on-5. And then he introduces the 5th member that he went out and got, and it is CM Punk. And you're like, what?
And the place fucking goes nuts.
By the way, with Heyman, they go nuts. With Punk, they go absolutely nuts. And then you're like, does that fit? And then you're like, oh my God, that fucking fits.
Yeah.
Punk returning first of all, to the day of his return, he returns to SmackDown a year later.
Oh, that's right.
And then to the day of his promo today on Raw, he says that, well, Paul Heyman, I am always a Paul Heyman guy, and he kind of puts over Roman Reigns in that day after Survivor Series return promo on Raw, saying, I'll see you when I see you. And then when I said earlier, when the week before Paul Heyman went through the table at MSG, they were in Chicago. CM Punk was there for the Drew McIntyre thing. And then Paul Heyman went up to him and said, please save me. Because he's looking for leadership. He's looking for someone to kind of leech onto, right? Because that's what he's done his whole fucking career, is leech onto a top guy. If it's
and also
Brock
really
Lesnar,
quick, Ryan, the best thing also when with desperate Heyman is when he would purposely like not shave and stay up too late, so he would really look that tired. What a commitment to looking just the most so haggard during all this. It's amazing.
Oh, there's always meaning with something with Paul Heyman, and especially with his stories. So overall, you're like, oh, CM Punk doesn't make sense, but there's 2 or 3 layers and excuses of why it makes sense.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
What did you think of the reveal of CM Punk being the 5th guy?
I loved it. It was perfect because it was just a matter of time. When's Heyman coming back? And I thought, part of me was thinking Heyman's going to come back at Survivor Series to lead them to the ring. That was my initial thought. But because he's necessary for the reveal of CM Punk, you have to do them both at the same time. And I thought it was fucking brilliant. It's only 2 weeks out too, man. That's great. And in that split second, I'm like, what, Punk? And then I went, oh yeah, Punk's a Heyman guy in real life. They've established earlier that Heyman had arranged that Punk was hands off from the bloodline.
Yeah, he's off limits, guys. He's personal. It's personal, you know.
Yeah, and also Punk doesn't have any emotional attachment really with anyone involved in this, except for he's fucking mad that they hurt his friend Paul Heyman. Like, because what's his real? He has no history with the Usos. He has no history with Sami Zayn.
He does love Jey Uso on screen on
screen and all right with that, but like
hockey games or so on and so forth. Yeah,
right. But like as far as storyline go, because he was gone for so long.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
He doesn't have any real background, like even with Roman. Like the only thing really he has with Roman was, I introduced the Shield, and that's it. Was there anything else, or besides like the whole like, hey, one of these days you and me are gonna fight? That's
you could go right? To, you could look at layers to start when he did his Colt Cabana thing. It's like all about Roman. It's all about Roman. And then
if they want, you know what, you
can sense some jealousy there from Roman. Roman could bring up some jealousy, and even then you can sense some jealousy between the two.
They could. I really hope they don't. I really hope they don't.
Vince would. I don't think they don't. They don't have to here.
I don't even know if Vince would. I don't. Tony Khan would. I mean, just don't go. I don't want them to go too inside baseball with that shit. And given the lawsuit that the lawsuits about that podcast, maybe just avoid that altogether.
Yeah, I don't think CM Punk would want to with the Colt Cabana at all. Right?
But I loved how angry Punk hit the ring. He just and Punk came out
old school,
old school as fuck. He's not going into War Games. He's going into the bunkhouse stampede.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's got the jeans, the t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off. He's taped up and shit. Belt buckle. All he needed was cowboy boots, and he immediately just went in and started beating the shit out of him. And then at the end, just by watching, you don't have to hear what they're saying. You're just watching the pantomiming. He's telling Roman that he points at Heyman. He's like, I'm here for him. But here's something I want to ask you, Ryan, because someone pointed this out, and I noticed it too, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. The way Heyman was dressed, he was dressed
the red suit,
like Solo.
Mm-hmm.
He was dressed the way Solo dresses, and I was like, oh, okay. Is that a? We're looking at a possible swerve by Heyman by going with the new bloodline, which I don't want. That seems very Vince Russo. Like, gotcha. Like, well, why? You put him through a table. So, but who knows?
What I will say to kind of put a bow on this. The red suit, it could be 2 things, right? One, it could be his Paul Bear with Kane. Like that's what Paul Bear wore when he brought the Kane. But most that's more of a joke. But with you, like you said, it's Solo Sikoa. And Paul Heyman always does something for meaning, right? So he could be playing into that, and it could mean nothing. Want us to think that he is going for Solo Sikoa. So he obviously dressed like Solo Sikoa. So we would run with it because we think that everything he does is for a reason. If it's the shaving, if it's the untucked shirt, whatever, right? So we think everything is meaningful. But what I think it is, I think it's nothing. And what I think Paul Heyman's role is here is Paul Heyman is a leech historically, right? He latches on to whatever's good for Paul Heyman. Even in 2001, leaving the company that he runs to go to the WWF to get a payday as an announcer and not telling the ECW guys, bankruptcy court, so on and so forth, making sure Paul Heyman's good before ECW is good, right? So Paul Heyman has always been about himself. Once he linked up with Roman Reigns in 2022, he was just fired as the Raw head writer, and he was irrelevant. And he constantly brings up that Roman Reigns make him relevant. Roman Reigns and his family has so much history. Roman Reigns saved his career, and they kind of made each other. So coming out of WrestleMania, that's why he was so disheveled and so confused on why Roman Reigns reacted to that and treated him how he treated him, made him vulnerable, and pretty much got his head cut off by this psychopath. And the new bloodline and these animals that Solo brought in, and he left Paul Heyman out to roast, and he got cooked. So Paul Heyman being the leech, Paul Heyman being so reliant on family, I think even playing into his own history, he brings in his own family, his own alliance, and perhaps he now has the power, and he sees the vulnerability in the new bloodline, the vulnerability in the OG bloodline, and it's opportunity for kind of him and Punk to start their own family, their own alliance, their own part of this story. I think Paul Heyman cashes in on his equity and kind of does his own thing.
Okay. Well, maybe, but I'm just going to say this because here's what I think. I think he's going to stay with Roman, because they're not going to make the mistake they made. Because here's it: Paul Heyman can also be an amazing babyface manager. He's done it. He's done it before. And when they have Paul Heyman associated with a guy, every single time they've done he turns on them in WWE. I'm saying the Brock one where he's like, "Fuck you, Brock. I'm going with the Big Show," and everyone was just like, "What? Ugh. And it didn't take. It didn't take, and they're still established together. They did it with Punk. Remember, they feuded him with Punk. They had him on top of a fucking Hell in the Cell. I seem to remember. Heyman was on top of the cell, and even then, I was like, I don't buy this. I know these guys are best friends, and I think maybe they're not going to make that mistake again with this. People want to see the wise man with Roman Reigns. They're a package deal like Paul Bearer and The Undertaker, that kind of thing. And I think it really works. But who knows? I mean, there's definitely, there's going to be something with Punk in the future. I think this is going to lead into a Rollins Punk feud somehow, just because Rollins isn't on the team. I think he might get involved, but who knows?
Yeah, why are you helping Roman Reigns? They've used Seth Rollins to get Bronson Reed into this.
They already established that they hate each other, and they haven't done an angle yet. So there you go.
They haven't done the big angle. They've done a lot of small angles. But I just saw it as a cute. I don't think it happens at War Games, but I think eventually it is. My family, Paul Heyman, rejected me. We're old. You're my old fling, CM Punk. The WWE kind of rejected you, but you're back, right? Let's kind of come together and really infect both of these things and be the ruler, because I've been the ruler the last 4 years of this jungle, and you deserve to be the ruler of this jungle. Let's work together and kind of get us there to rule together.
Or does it work to him eventually being off TV more, because he's from him not having any role in creative, he certainly does now. And maybe
his fingers a lot of things backstage better here too.
Yeah.
All right, I don't think that this finish honestly matters, because I think this whole thing is continue. I think, but the
babyface has got to win this. The babyface has got to win this fucking thing. Okay,
unless they do a Heyman in Solo cahoots thing, but honestly, I think that would suck.
No, that would get over like when the fucking when Mr. Perfect turned on the Horseman in War Games, and I remember it pissed me off so bad that I was like, fuck this, and I went and I started just watching WWF and seeing what shit Vince was throwing against the wall, because that finish pissed me off so bad that I didn't want to watch their TV anymore. Babyface has got to go over in this.
Yeah, I suspect too as well, and I think that would be the heavily favored is
I
the
want to see
OG.
what Jacob Fatu is going to do in that cage, man. Because wow, he's like, the hype on him. I read the hype about him for years, and I never saw him wrestle. And the hype is all real, man. He's one of my favorite guys right now.
Yeah, do you think that the hype of this match will live up to it? The anticipation is high, and I think the bar is super high.
I think so.
Yeah, me
I think
too. I think
so. I think so. I'm
there's
really
so
looking
much
forward to it.
juice in the story.
This is
There's so much meat on this bone to bite into. Yeah, so every other Saturday, Mystery Titans Theater, we can catch you there, Johnny.
yes.
What else you got going on?
Just that. As far as anything to hype is Mystery Titans Theater live on Twitch. Pretty much every other Saturday. We're taking about 3 weeks off right now. We'll be returning, and also all the shows are on YouTube. But we'll be returning December 16th with with our guest. Will be the one, the only, the wrestling genius Daniel Makabe will be joining Mystery Titans Theater for our Christmas show. So, be sure to check that one out. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, so you go from me to Daniel Makabe. Awesome. All right.
Hey, only the best for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnny. We'll see you on the next one, buddy.
Thank you. This was a hell of a good time.